Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation Cracks. Thomas Brennan had built his life like a fortress, methodical, calculated, impenetrable. At 42, he owned a successful private security consulting firm that specialized in high-end corporate protection and risk assessment. His military background in special operations had taught him patience, precision, and the art of reading people. He'd learned early that trust was a luxury he couldn't afford in his line of work, but somehow, he'd convinced himself that home was different. The suburban house in Westchester County was his sanctuary, complete with Lisa, his wife of 12 years, and their 8-year-old daughter Chloe. Lisa worked as a real estate agent for a high-end firm, her natural charm and beauty making her one of the top sellers in the area. She was the kind of woman who could walk into any room and command attention, a quality that had initially drawn Tom to her at a charity gala years ago. Tom's relationship with his own family had been complicated. His father, a career military man, had been absent for most of his childhood, leaving Tom to be raised by a series of housekeepers and boarding schools. When his parents died in a car accident during his second tour overseas, Tom had learned the hard lesson that people leave, willingly or not. The only person he'd truly opened his heart to was Lisa, and later, Chloe. Chloe was everything to him, intelligent beyond her years, with Lisa's bright blue eyes and Tom's stubborn determination. She had a way of seeing through people that sometimes unnerved adults. Tom often joked that she'd inherited his tactical mind, always 3 steps ahead in whatever game she was playing. The cracks in Tom's perfect life had started small. Lisa working late more frequently, weekend showings that seemed to stretch on indefinitely, and a new enthusiasm for fitness that included early morning runs and evening yoga classes. Tom's trained eye picked up on the subtle changes. New perfume, designer clothes that seemed beyond what her commission check should allow, and most tellingly, the way she'd started sleeping with her phone face down. But Tom was nothing if not thorough. He'd begun his own quiet investigation 3 weeks ago, using skills he'd hoped never to employ at home. The preliminary findings were damning. Unexplained gaps in her schedule, credit card charges at restaurants during times she claimed to be showing houses, and most recently, a burner phone hidden in her gym bag. Kevin Morrison was Lisa's lover, though Tom had known him long before he'd become a threat. Kevin was Tom's business partner and former Army buddy from their Delta Force days. They'd served 3 tours together in Afghanistan, watched each other's backs in firefights, and Kevin had been Tom's best man at his wedding. Kevin's own marriage had ended messily 2 years ago, leaving him bitter and apparently willing to destroy his oldest friendship. The betrayal cut deeper than any combat wound Tom had ever suffered. In war, you expected the enemy to try to kill you. But this violation of the most sacred trusts in his life, was something else entirely. Tom's office was a study in controlled chaos, with multiple monitors displaying various security feeds and analysis software. He'd been using his own surveillance equipment to document the affair, though he was careful to stay within legal boundaries. His company's reputation depended on it, and more importantly, he needed admissible evidence for what was coming. The manila folder on his desk contained 3 weeks of meticulous documentation, photographs, timestamps, financial records, and communication logs. Kevin and Lisa had been careful, but not careful enough to evade someone with Tom's resources and expertise. As Tom reviewed the evidence, his phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "Working late again tonight. New client in Manhattan. Don't wait up. Red heart." Tom checked his surveillance data. Lisa's car was currently parked at the Riverside Hotel, 20 minutes from their house. Kevin's BMW was in the same lot. The betrayal was complete, but Tom's response would be surgical. He'd learned in the military that emotion was the enemy of effective action. Rage was a luxury he couldn't afford until the mission was complete. Chapter 2. Through a Child's Eyes. Saturday afternoon, Westchester Mall buzzed with weekend shoppers. Tom walked beside Chloe, carrying her new art supplies while she chattered about her upcoming school project. The normalcy of it felt surreal given what he knew about his wife's activities. "Dad, can we get ice cream before we go home?" Chloe asked, tugging on his hand. "Sure, kiddo. Whatever you want." They were heading toward the food court when Chloe suddenly stopped dead in her tracks. Her small hand gripped his tighter, and when Tom looked down, he saw an expression on his daughter's face he'd never seen before. A combination of confusion and something that looked like adult understanding. "Dad, quick into the bathroom," she whispered urgently, pulling him toward the family restroom. "What's going on?" Tom asked as Chloe dragged him into a stall and locked the door. "Shoo, don't move." "Look." Chloe peered under the door, then pointed for Tom to do the same. Tom crouched down and followed her gaze. Through the gap under the stall door, he could see into the mall corridor. What he saw made his blood run cold. Lisa stood near the fountain, but she wasn't alone. Kevin had his arms around her waist, and they were kissing with the passion of new lovers, completely oblivious to their surroundings. Worse still, Tom could see they were wearing matching silver bracelets, expensive ones that Lisa had told him she'd bought for herself. But what shook Tom to his core wasn't just seeing the affair with his own eyes. It was the realization that his 8-year-old daughter had recognized something was wrong and had protected him from a potentially public confrontation. Chloe had seen her mother with another man and had instinctively understood the implications. "Daddy," Chloe whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why is Mommy kissing Uncle Kevin like she kisses you?" The question hit Tom like a physical blow. Uncle Kevin, the man who'd taught Chloe to ride a bike when Tom was on a business trip, the man who'd helped them move into their house, the man who'd been at every birthday party, every Christmas morning, every significant moment of their family life. Tom's military training kicked in. Assess the situation, control the emotion, protect the asset. And right now, his daughter was the most important asset in his world. "Sometimes adults are confusing, sweetheart," Tom said carefully, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "We need to be very quiet and wait for them to leave, okay?" Chloe nodded solemnly, her blue eyes showing an understanding that no child should have to possess. They waited in silence for 10 minutes until Tom was certain Lisa and Kevin had moved on. As they finally emerged from the bathroom, Tom's mind was already shifting into tactical mode. The game had changed. This wasn't just about Lisa's betrayal anymore. It was about protecting Chloe from the fallout of what was about to happen. "Chloe," Tom said, kneeling down to her level as they walked back to the car. "What we saw back there, it's going to be our secret for now, okay? Daddy needs some time to figure things out." "Is Mommy in trouble?" Chloe asked, her voice small. Tom chose his words carefully. "Mommy made some bad choices. And sometimes when people make bad choices, there are consequences. But no matter what happens, you and I are going to be okay. Do you trust me?" Chloe nodded, but Tom could see the fear in her eyes. His daughter's childhood innocence had been shattered in a mall bathroom, and someone was going to pay dearly for that. The drive home was quiet, with Chloe staring out the window and Tom's mind racing through possibilities. Every strategy he'd ever learned about psychological warfare was suddenly relevant to his personal life. When they arrived home, Lisa's car was already in the driveway. She met them at the door with a bright smile, asking about their shopping trip as if she hadn't just been in another man's arms an hour earlier. "Did you two have fun?" Lisa asked, kissing Tom on the cheek and ruffling Chloe's hair. "It was educational," Tom replied evenly, watching his wife's face for any sign that she suspected they'd seen her. There was nothing. Lisa was either a consummate actress or completely confident in her deception. As Lisa helped Chloe organize her new art supplies, Tom excused himself to his study. The manila folder on his desk had taken on new significance. What had been evidence for a divorce proceeding was now ammunition for something much more comprehensive. Tom opened his laptop and began typing a detailed plan. Lisa and Kevin had crossed a line today, not just by conducting their affair in public, but by forcing his daughter to witness their betrayal. That was unforgivable. The punishment would fit the crime, and Tom Brennan was going to make sure both his wife and his former best friend understood exactly what they'd lost. Chapter 3: The Architect of Ruin. Monday morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Lisa kissed Tom goodbye as she left for work, reminding him about dinner plans with Kevin and his sister Rebecca that weekend. The irony wasn't lost on Tom. His wife was scheduling social events with her lover, all while maintaining the facade of their marriage. Tom's private security firm, Brennan Strategic Consulting, occupied a nondescript building in White Plains. From the outside, it looked like any other corporate office, but the interior housed some of the most sophisticated surveillance and security equipment available. Tom had built his reputation on being able to find information others couldn't and protect clients from threats they didn't see coming. His assistant, Monica Diaz, had been with the company since its inception 5 years ago. A former FBI analyst, she understood discretion and had an uncanny ability to find digital breadcrumbs that others missed. She was also one of the few people Tom trusted completely, perhaps because she'd never tried to get close to his personal life. "I need you to run a comprehensive background check," Tom said, sliding a piece of paper across Monica's desk. "Everything. Financial records, communication patterns, travel history, the works." Monica glanced at the paper, and her eyebrows raised slightly. "Kevin Morrison? Isn't he your business partner?" "He was," Tom replied coldly. "Now he's a problem that needs solving." Monica had worked with Tom long enough to recognize that tone. She didn't ask questions. "How deep do you want me to go?" "Ocean floor. I want to know every secret, every vulnerability, every pressure point. And Monica, this stays between us." "Understood." Tom's next stop was his lawyer, Frank Petrov, whose office overlooked the Hudson River. Frank had handled Tom's business contracts and personal legal matters for years. He was known for his discretion and his willingness to operate in the gray areas of the law. "I need to discuss some hypothetical situations," Tom began, settling into the leather chair across from Frank's desk. Frank smiled grimly. "In my experience, Tom, your hypotheticals have a way of becoming very real very quickly." "What's the situation?" "Hypothetically, if someone wanted to ensure a cheating spouse received nothing in a divorce and wanted to destroy their lover's life in the process, what would be the most effective legal approach?" Frank leaned back in his chair, studying Tom's face. "Are we talking about Lisa?" "Hypothetically. And the lover?" "Someone who violated multiple trust relationships." Frank was quiet for a long moment. "Hypothetically, the key would be documenting not just the adultery, but any financial misconduct, breach of fiduciary duty, or other actionable behaviors. New York is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery can still impact asset distribution if you can prove financial waste or dissipation of marital assets." "What about business partnerships?" "That's trickier. You'd need to prove breach of partnership agreements, misuse of company resources, or violation of non-compete clauses." "But Tom," Frank leaned forward, "whatever you're planning, make sure it's legal. You've built a good business. Don't throw it away for revenge." Tom stood to leave. "I'm not throwing anything away, Frank. I'm protecting it." The rest of the week, Tom maintained his normal routine while quietly building his case. He discovered that Kevin had been using company resources to impress Lisa, charging expensive dinners to the business account, using the company's luxury hotel partnerships for their meetings, and even billing personal travel as business expenses. More damaging was what Monica found in Kevin's digital trail. Kevin had been careless with his personal communications, using company computers for private emails and storing personal files on the business server. His financial records showed significant gambling debts and some questionable investments that suggested he might be vulnerable to financial pressure. But the most interesting discovery came from security footage at various locations where Kevin and Lisa had met. Tom's company had installed security systems for several high-end hotels and restaurants in the area. As a favor to Tom's company, the security managers were willing to provide footage for insurance purposes. The videos showed not just Kevin and Lisa's relationship, but also captured them with other people. Lisa, it seemed, had been telling Kevin details about Tom's business dealings, information that Kevin had then shared with competitors. They weren't just having an affair, they were actively working together to undermine Tom's company. This changed everything. What Tom had initially seen as a personal betrayal was actually a coordinated attack on everything he'd built. Lisa and Kevin hadn't just broken his heart, they'd been systematically destroying his livelihood. By Friday evening, Tom had assembled a comprehensive dossier that would end both of their careers and leave them facing potential criminal charges for corporate espionage and theft. But that wasn't enough. They'd involved his daughter. They'd made her complicit in their deception by forcing her to keep their secret. That was unforgivable. Tom sat in his study, reviewing the final details of his plan. Tomorrow night's dinner with Kevin and Rebecca would be the beginning of the end. But first, he needed to have a conversation with someone he'd been avoiding all week. "Chloe," he called softly, knocking on her bedroom door. "Can we talk?" His daughter looked up from her homework, and Tom could see the worry she'd been carrying since Saturday. She was too young to fully understand what she'd witnessed, but old enough to know that something was very wrong. "Am I in trouble for what we saw?" she asked quietly. Tom sat on the edge of her bed and pulled her into a hug. "No, sweetheart. You're not in trouble. You did exactly the right thing. But I need you to know that things are going to change soon. Mommy and we're going to have some problems. Because of Uncle Kevin? The simple question pierced Tom's heart. His daughter shouldn't have to ask such things. Yes, because of Uncle Kevin. But whatever happens, you and I are going to be okay. I promise you that. Chloe nodded against his chest. Daddy, are you going to hurt them? Tom was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. I'm going to make sure they understand what they've done. Sometimes when people break important rules, there have to be consequences. Like when I broke your watch and had to pay for it with my allowance. Something like that, kiddo. Something like that. As Tom tucked Chloe into bed, he made a silent promise. His daughter would never again have to hide in a bathroom stall because of other people's failures. Whatever it took, whoever got hurt in the process, Tom would make sure of that. Chapter 4. The Dinner Party. Saturday evening brought an early autumn chill to Westchester County. Tom had spent the day making final preparations, reviewing every detail of his plan with the precision of a military operation. Lisa bustled around the kitchen, preparing dinner for Kevin and his sister Rebecca, completely unaware that she was orchestrating her own downfall. Rebecca Morrison was a divorce attorney from Manhattan, successful and sharp-witted, but she'd always been naive about her brother's character flaws. She genuinely believed Kevin was working through his own divorce trauma and had no idea about his affair with Lisa. Tom found her ignorance almost tragic. She was about to lose her brother, and she didn't even know it yet. You seem tense tonight, Lisa observed, adjusting Tom's tie as they waited for their guests to arrive. Everything okay? Tom smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Just tired. Long week. The doorbell rang, and Chloe bounded down the stairs to answer it. Uncle Kevin. Aunt Rebecca, she called out, though Tom noticed a hesitation in her voice that hadn't been there before. Kevin entered with his usual confidence, embracing Lisa a moment too long while handing her a bottle of expensive wine. Rebecca followed, elegant in her tailored dress, carrying flowers for the table. Tom, my friend, Kevin said, extending his hand. Thanks for having us over. I know things have been crazy at the office. Tom shook Kevin's hand, noting how his former partner avoided direct eye contact. Not a problem. We're family, right? The irony of the statement wasn't lost on anyone who knew the truth. Dinner conversation flowed easily, with Rebecca discussing her latest cases and Lisa talking about the hot real estate market. Kevin seemed more animated than usual, perhaps emboldened by the apparent normalcy of the evening. Tom played the role of the gracious host, refilling wine glasses and steering conversation toward business matters. Actually, Tom said as they finished the main course, I wanted to discuss something work-related. Rebecca, you might find this interesting from a legal perspective. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a tablet, placing it in the center of the table. I've been reviewing our company's security protocols, and I discovered some concerning activity. Kevin's fork paused halfway to his mouth. What kind of activity? Tom tapped the screen, and security footage began playing. Kevin and Lisa at the Riverside Hotel, time-stamped and crystal clear. The table fell silent except for Rebecca's sharp intake of breath. The interesting thing about infidelity, Tom continued conversationally, is how it often reveals other character flaws. Monica ran a full analysis of our business accounts. He swiped to the next screen, showing financial records. $37,000 in unauthorized charges over the past 6 months. Company credit cards used for personal expenses, including hotel rooms, jewelry, and dinners that had nothing to do with business. Lisa had gone pale, her wine glass trembling in her hand. Kevin leaned back in his chair, his jaw clenched. But the real fascinating part, Tom continued, was discovering how much confidential business information was shared with our competitors. Rebecca, in your professional opinion, would corporate espionage and theft charges stick in a case like this? Rebecca stared at her brother in horror. Kevin, tell me this isn't real. Tom, let's discuss this privately, Kevin said, standing up from the table. Sit down, Tom said quietly, but there was steel in his voice that made Kevin comply immediately. We're not done yet. Tom swiped to another screen. Bank records showing Kevin's gambling debts and high-interest loans. $43,000 in debt to some very unpleasant people. That explains the theft, but not the industrial espionage. That was just greed. Tom, please, Lisa whispered, finally finding her voice. Can we what, Lisa? Pretend this didn't happen? Pretend you haven't been planning to leave me for my business partner? Pretend you haven't been stealing from me to fund your affair. Tom stood and walked to the window, looking out at the perfectly manicured yard he'd worked so hard to provide. You know what the worst part is? Chloe saw you two together at the mall. My 8-year-old daughter had to hide in a bathroom stall because her mother was making out with her uncle in public. The words hit Lisa like physical blows. She covered her face with her hands, finally understanding the full scope of what she'd done. You involved my child in your deception, Tom continued, his voice growing colder. That was your biggest mistake. Rebecca spoke up, her lawyer instincts kicking in despite her shock. Tom, whatever you're planning, think about this carefully. Revenge has consequences. Tom turned back to the table, his expression calm, but his eyes burning with controlled fury. This isn't revenge, Rebecca. This is justice. He picked up his phone and pressed a button. Within seconds, car doors were slamming outside. Tom had arranged for Kevin's creditors to receive an anonymous tip about his location, along with evidence of his financial crimes. Kevin Morrison, a voice called from outside. We need to talk. Kevin's face went white as he realized what was happening. Tom, you can't. Actually, I can. You stole from my company, violated our partnership agreement, and committed fraud using corporate assets. I reported it to the authorities this afternoon. Those gentlemen outside are from the district attorney's office, along with representatives from the people you owe money to. The front door opened, and 3 men in suits entered, followed by 2 others who looked considerably less official, but far more threatening. Kevin Morrison, the lead man asked, showing his badge. You're under arrest for embezzlement and corporate fraud. As Kevin was led away in handcuffs, he looked back at Tom with a mixture of rage and desperation. This isn't over, Tom. I'll destroy you for this. Tom smiled coldly. You already tried. And you failed. Rebecca stood to follow her brother, pausing at the door. Tom, I understand you're hurt, but Kevin's still my brother. This will ruin him. He ruined himself, Tom replied. I just documented it. As the police cars drove away, Tom turned his attention back to Lisa, who sat frozen at the dinner table, staring at the empty chair where Kevin had been sitting. Now, Tom said, settling back into his seat, let's discuss your future. Chapter 5, The Unraveling. Lisa sat at the dinner table like a statue, her face pale and her hands shaking as the reality of her situation sank in. The sound of police cars fading into the distance seemed to echo in the sudden silence of their dining room. Tom, she whispered, we need to talk about this privately. Why? Tom asked, pouring himself another glass of wine with deliberate casualness. Ashamed of your choices? Afraid of what our daughter might think when she learns the truth? She's just a child. A child you forced to keep your secrets. Tom interrupted, his voice sharp. A child who had to protect me from witnessing your betrayal in public. Don't you dare talk to me about protecting Chloe when you've spent months traumatizing her. Lisa's composure finally cracked, and tears began streaming down her face. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Kevin and I. It just happened. We never meant to hurt anyone. Tom laughed, but there was no humor in it. You never meant to hurt anyone? Lisa, you've been systematically destroying everything I've built. The affair was bad enough. But stealing company information? Helping Kevin embezzle funds? That wasn't something that just happened. That was calculated. He stood and walked to his study, returning with the manila folder that had started everything. I have records of every lie you've told me, every secret meeting, every dollar you've helped steal from my company. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Lisa wiped her eyes, trying to regain some composure. What do you want from me, Tom? An apology? I'm sorry. I know I made mistakes. Mistakes. Tom's voice rose for the first time all evening. Mistakes are leaving the milk out or forgetting to pick up dry cleaning. What you did was calculated betrayal. You chose this, Lisa. Every single day for months, you chose to lie to me, to steal from me, to destroy our family. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made them both look up. Chloe appeared in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes sleepily. Daddy? I heard yelling. Where's Uncle Kevin? Tom's expression immediately softened. He had to leave, sweetheart. Come here. Chloe walked to her father, and Tom picked her up, settling her on his lap. Mommy and Daddy need to have a grown-up conversation. Can you go back to bed? I'll come tuck you in again in a few minutes. Are you getting divorced? Chloe asked with the directness that only children possess. The question hung in the air like a bomb. Lisa covered her mouth, fresh tears starting. Yes, kiddo, Tom said gently. Mommy made some choices that mean she can't live here anymore. But you and I are going to be okay. I promise. Chloe nodded solemnly, then looked at her mother. Mommy, are you sad? Lisa couldn't speak, so she just nodded. Are you sorry? Chloe asked. Yes, baby. I'm so sorry. Chloe considered this for a moment with the gravity of a judge. Daddy says when you break something important, you have to fix it or face consequences. Can you fix what you broke? The question was innocent, but it cut deeper than any accusation Tom could have made. Lisa looked at her daughter's serious blue eyes and realized that some things, once broken, could never be repaired. No, sweetheart, Lisa whispered. I don't think I can fix this. Chloe nodded as if this confirmed what she'd already suspected. She kissed her father's cheek and walked back upstairs without another word. When they were alone again, Tom turned back to Lisa with renewed determination. That's the conversation you forced an 8-year-old to have. She's known something was wrong for weeks, and now she has to watch her family fall apart because her mother couldn't keep her wedding vows. Tom, please. I know I hurt you, but we can work through this. Marriage counseling, therapy. No. The word was final. There's no working through this, Lisa. You didn't just cheat on me. You conspired against me. You helped Kevin steal from my company. You shared confidential information with our competitors. This isn't a marriage problem. This is a criminal conspiracy. Tom walked to the window, looking out at the quiet suburban street that had been his sanctuary. I loved you for 12 years, Lisa. I trusted you with everything. My heart, my business, my child. And you turned it all into a weapon against me. I never meant. Don't. Tom turned back to her, and Lisa saw something in his eyes that made her step back. Don't tell me what you meant. Tell me what you did. Tell me how many nights you came home from being with Kevin and kissed me goodnight. Tell me how many times you looked me in the eye and lied. Tell me how many family dinners we had where you were planning to destroy my life. Lisa sank into her chair, finally understanding that there would be no forgiveness, no second chances. What happens now? Now you pack a bag and leave. Tonight. My lawyer will serve you with divorce papers on Monday. You'll get nothing in the settlement. Adultery and financial misconduct tend to influence asset distribution, even in no-fault states. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Call your sister. Get a hotel. Figure it out. But you're not sleeping in my house tonight. Lisa stood on shaky legs. What about Chloe? She's my daughter too. Tom's expression grew even colder. Chloe is the only reason you're not sitting in a jail cell next to Kevin right now. But don't mistake my restraint for weakness. You'll have supervised visitation if you're lucky. Any attempt to manipulate her or turn her against me, and I'll make sure you lose even that. Tom, you can't keep me from my daughter. Watch me, he said quietly. I have recordings of Kevin discussing his debts, his theft, and his plans to destroy my business. I have evidence of your participation in corporate espionage. I have financial records showing you used marital assets to fund your affair. And I have a traumatized 8-year-old who can testify about what she saw. Tom picked up his phone. You have 30 minutes to pack and leave, or I call the police and have you arrested for theft. Don't test me on this, Lisa. You've seen what I'm capable of when someone betrays me. As Lisa climbed the stairs to pack, Tom poured himself another drink and sat back down at the dinner table. The evening had gone exactly as he'd planned, but the victory felt hollow. Kevin was facing criminal charges and would likely spend years in prison. Lisa would be left with nothing, no husband, no home, limited access to her daughter, and a reputation destroyed beyond repair. But none of that would erase the image of his daughter hiding in a bathroom stall, or the knowledge that the two people he'd trusted most in the world had conspired to destroy him. Tom finished his drink and went upstairs to check on Chloe. She was lying awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling. Is Mommy leaving tonight? She asked as Tom sat beside her. Yes, sweetheart. She has to. Will she come back? Tom considered lying, offering false hope, but Chloe deserved the truth. Not to live here, but she'll still be your mother, and you'll still see her sometimes. Chloe was quiet for a long moment. Daddy, are you going to be okay? The question nearly broke Tom's heart. His 8-year-old daughter was worried about him, when she should be thinking about toys and friends and childhood things. I'm going to be fine, kiddo. We both are. I promise you that. Good, Chloe said, finally smiling. Because I don't want anyone else to get hurt. As Tom turned off her light and closed her door, He realized that his daughter was already wiser than the adults who had failed her. She understood what Lisa and Kevin never had, that actions have consequences, and some betrayals can never be forgiven. Downstairs, he heard Lisa's car pulling out of the driveway for the last time. Chapter 6. The Reckoning. 3 weeks later, Tom stood in his lawyer's office reviewing the final divorce settlement. Frank Petrov had outdone himself. Lisa would receive virtually nothing from the marriage, and her supervised visitation with Chloe was limited to 4 hours every other weekend. She tried to contest it, Frank reported, but the evidence you provided was overwhelming. Her lawyer advised her to accept the terms rather than risk criminal prosecution. In Kevin's situation, 12 to 15 years, likely. The federal prosecutors were very interested in the corporate espionage angle, and his gambling creditors were happy to provide additional testimony about his debts and desperate financial situation. Tom nodded, feeling no satisfaction in his former partner's downfall. Kevin had chosen his path when he decided to betray their friendship and steal from their company. The business had actually grown stronger since Kevin's arrest. Several clients had been impressed by Tom's swift handling of the internal security breach, and new contracts were pouring in. Monica had been promoted to partner, and they'd hired 2 additional investigators to handle the increased workload. "There's one more thing," Frank said, sliding an envelope across the desk. This arrived yesterday. The letter was from Rebecca Morrison, Kevin's sister. Tom opened it carefully. "Tom, I know you probably don't want to hear from anyone in my family, but I needed you to know that I understand why you did what you did. I've been practicing law for 15 years, and I've seen plenty of revenge cases. What you did wasn't revenge, it was justice. Kevin's actions weren't just about your marriage. I've discovered he's been stealing from me as well, using my credit and business connections to cover his gambling debts. You saved me from years of financial ruin by exposing him when you did. I also want you to know that I visited Lisa last week. She's broken, completely broken. She keeps saying she never meant for things to go so far, that Kevin convinced her you wouldn't care about the business information because it was just gossip. She truly doesn't understand the magnitude of what she participated in. I'm not asking you to forgive either of them. I just thought you should know that they're both facing the consequences you intended. Kevin will likely die in prison. His health isn't good, and he's made enemies among other inmates. Lisa is working as a hotel clerk in Queens and living in a studio apartment. Her real estate license was revoked due to the criminal investigation. You protected your daughter and your business. You did what any good father and businessman would do. Rebecca." Tom folded the letter and put it away. He felt no joy in Rebecca's report, but no guilt either. Lisa and Kevin had made their choices. They could live with the consequences. The office door opened, and Monica poked her head in. "Tom, your daughter's school called. There's been an incident." Tom's blood ran cold. "What kind of incident?" "Chloe got into a fight. The principal wants to see you immediately." 20 minutes later, Tom sat in Principal Martinez's office, looking at his daughter's defiant face. Chloe had a small cut on her lip and a bruise forming on her cheek, but her eyes blazed with determination. "Mr. Brennan," Principal Martinez began, "Chloe was involved in an altercation with another student during lunch. The other child, Bobby Henderson, was teasing her about her mother, and Chloe, well, she fought back." "What exactly did Bobby say?" Tom asked, keeping his voice calm. "According to witnesses, he called Chloe's mother a cheater and said that's why her parents got divorced. Chloe punched him in the nose and told him to shut up about things he doesn't understand." Tom looked at his daughter, who met his gaze steadily. "Chloe, is that what happened?" "He said Mommy was bad and that you threw her out because she was sleeping with other men," Chloe said quietly. "He said everyone knows and that I'm stupid if I don't see it. I told him to stop, but he kept saying it." Tom's heart ached for his daughter. The adult problems of his marriage had inevitably spilled over into her childhood world, and now she was fighting battles she should never have to fight. "I don't normally condone violence," Principal Martinez continued, "but given the circumstances and the fact that this is Chloe's first incident, we're only implementing a 1-day suspension. However, I think it might be beneficial for her to speak with the school counselor." "That won't be necessary," Tom said firmly. Chloe was defending her family's honor. "I'll have a conversation with her about better ways to handle the situation, but I'm not going to punish her for standing up to a bully." Principal Martinez looked surprised. "Mr. Brennan, we need to teach children that violence isn't the solution. And we need to teach them that sometimes people say cruel things, and we have to stand up for ourselves. Tom interrupted. Bobby Henderson learned today that there are consequences for running his mouth. Chloe learned that I'll support her when she's right. Those seem like valuable lessons to me. On the drive home, Chloe was quiet until they pulled into their driveway. Daddy? Am I in trouble? Tom turned in his seat to look at his daughter. Are you sorry you hit Bobby? Chloe considered the question seriously. I'm sorry I had to hit him, but I'm not sorry I did it. He was being mean about Mommy, and even though she did bad things, she's still my mom. Tom felt a surge of pride. His daughter understood loyalty, justice, and the difference between right and necessary. She was going to be stronger than both her parents. You're not in trouble, kiddo. But next time someone says something like that, I want you to tell them that our family's business is private, and if they keep bothering you, they can discuss it with me. Sometimes the threat of consequences is more effective than the consequences themselves. Chloe grinned, showing the gap where she'd lost a tooth the week before. Like what you did to Uncle Kevin. You told him what would happen before you did it. Exactly like that. Sometimes people need to understand the rules before they break them. As they walked into the house, Tom realized that Chloe had learned more from watching his handling of the divorce than he'd intended. She understood that actions had consequences, that loyalty mattered, and that sometimes you had to fight for what was important. She also understood that forgiveness wasn't always appropriate, and that some betrayals were unforgivable. Tom had raised a daughter who would never be anyone's victim, who would never tolerate being deceived or betrayed. In the wreckage of his marriage, that seemed like a worthy legacy. Chapter 7. The Final Move. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Tom received an unexpected visitor at his office. Lisa stood in his reception area, looking nothing like the polished real estate agent he'd once been married to. Her clothes were department store basics, her hair was unstyled, and she'd lost weight in a way that spoke of stress rather than health. I need to talk to you, she said when Monica announced her presence. Tom considered having security escort her out, but curiosity won over caution. 5 minutes. Lisa sat across from his desk, her hands folded in her lap like a child in the principal's office. I wanted to see Chloe for Christmas. My supervised visits, they're not enough. She's my daughter too. You should have thought about that before you chose Kevin over your family, Tom replied coldly. I know I made mistakes. Stop calling them mistakes. Tom's voice cut through her words like a blade. Mistakes are accidents. What you did was deliberate. You chose to betray me every single day for months. You chose to steal from my company. You chose to traumatize our daughter by conducting your affair in public places where she might see you. Lisa's composure cracked. I know I hurt you, but please don't punish Chloe because you hate me. She needs her mother. Chloe needs stability. She needs honesty. She needs people in her life who won't lie to her or use her as a pawn in their selfish games. Tell me, Lisa, which of those things can you provide? I'm her mother, Lisa repeated desperately. That has to count for something. Tom leaned back in his chair, studying the woman who had once been the center of his world. You know what Chloe asked me last week? She asked if you were coming to her school play. When I told her you weren't allowed, she said, That's okay, Daddy. I don't want her to be sad when she sees how good I am at things she didn't help me practice. The words hit Lisa like physical blows. She didn't say that. She's 8 years old, and she's already learned not to count on you. Congratulations, Lisa. You've successfully taught our daughter that mothers can't be trusted. Lisa broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. I just want my family back. I know I was wrong. I know I hurt everyone. But I love Chloe. Please, Tom. I'm begging you. Tom watched her cry without feeling any sympathy. He'd seen this performance before. Lisa's tears had once been enough to make him forget arguments, overlook inconsistencies, forgive small betrayals. But those days were over. You love Chloe? Tom asked quietly. Then prove it. Disappear. Lisa looked up, shocked. What? Sign away your parental rights. Give Chloe a chance to have a real family with people who won't abandon her when things get difficult. Let her forget that her mother chose a gambling addict over her own daughter. I can't do that. She's all I have left. She was all you had left when you were sleeping with Kevin, but that didn't stop you. Tom stood and walked to the window. Chloe is thriving without you, Lisa. Her grades are excellent. She's made new friends, and she stopped having nightmares about finding you with other men. Your presence in her life is a wound that won't heal. You're poisoning her against me. Tom turned back to Lisa with a cold smile. I don't need to poison her against you. You did that yourself. Do you know what she said when I told her you wanted more visits? She asked if you were going to bring any more uncles with you. The room fell silent except for Lisa's quiet crying. Here's what's going to happen, Tom continued. You're going to leave my office and never contact me or my daughter again. If you try to interfere with our lives, I'll have you arrested for harassment. If you try to see Chloe outside of your scheduled visits, I'll file for a restraining order. And if you ever try to manipulate her or turn her against me, I'll make sure the rest of your life is as miserable as you tried to make mine. Tom, please. Your 5 minutes are up. Tom pressed the intercom button. Monica, please escort Mrs. Chun out of the building. Lisa stood on shaky legs. This isn't over, Tom. She's my daughter, and I have rights. No, Tom said quietly. You had rights. You gave them up when you chose to destroy your family. What you have now are court-ordered privileges that I can revoke any time you step out of line. As security escorted Lisa from the building, Tom felt a familiar sense of completion. Another loose and tied up, another threat neutralized. His phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. Dad, can we have pizza for dinner? I got an A on my science project. Tom smiled as he typed back. Absolutely. I'm proud of you, kiddo. That evening, as he watched Chloe excitedly explain her volcano project over dinner, Tom realized that the best revenge against Lisa wasn't destroying her life. It was building a better one without her. Chloe was happy, secure, and surrounded by people who would never betray her trust. She was learning to be strong, independent, and uncompromising when it came to loyalty and honesty. Lisa had lost everything that mattered, not because Tom had taken it from her, but because she'd thrown it away with both hands. Justice, Tom reflected, sometimes looked a lot like simply letting people face the natural consequences of their choices. Chapter 8. The Inheritance. 2 years after the divorce, Tom's life had settled into a comfortable routine. Brennan Strategic Consulting had become one of the most respected security firms on the East Coast, and Chloe was thriving in 5th grade. She'd grown into a confident, articulate child who showed early signs of inheriting her father's strategic mind and uncompromising moral code. The call came on a Tuesday evening while Tom was helping Chloe with her math homework. Tom, it's Frank. I have some news about Lisa. Tom moved to his study, closing the door behind him. What now? She's dead, Tom. Car accident last night. Lost control on the Bronx River Parkway. Hit a concrete barrier. The police think she fell asleep at the wheel. Tom felt no grief, only a cold sense of finality. What about her family? Does anyone need to be notified? Her sister Catherine has been informed. She's asking about Chloe. About custody arrangements. There are no custody arrangements to discuss. Lisa signed away her rights 6 months ago, remember? She finally accepted that Chloe was better off without her. Tom had engineered that decision carefully, using financial pressure and the threat of criminal charges to convince Lisa that abandoning her daughter was her only option. She'd held out for months, but eventually even she had to admit that her presence in Chloe's life caused more harm than good. Catherine doesn't know about the relinquishment. She thinks she has a claim on Chloe as next of kin. Then she's mistaken. Draw up whatever papers you need to make it clear that Catherine has no legal standing. Chloe is my daughter, period. Tom, there's something else. Lisa left everything to Chloe in her will. It's not much, about $15,000 and some personal items, but Catherine is questioning whether Chloe should inherit anything given the circumstances of the divorce. Tom was quiet for a moment, considering the implications. What kind of personal items? Photo albums, jewelry, some letters she apparently wrote to Chloe but never sent. Catherine says Lisa was struggling with guilt about giving up her parental rights. She'd been in therapy, trying to get her life together. Too little, too late, Tom said coldly. But I'll take care of informing Chloe about her mother's death. And Frank, make sure Catherine understands that any attempt to contact my daughter will result in a restraining order. After hanging up, Tom sat in his study for a long time, processing the news. Lisa was gone, and with her death, the last potential threat to his carefully constructed life with Chloe was eliminated. There would be no more awkward supervised visits, no more attempts at reconciliation, no more chances for Lisa to disrupt their stability. He found Chloe in the living room, reading a book about marine biology. Kiddo, I need to tell you something important. Chloe looked up, and Tom could see the intelligence in her eyes that reminded him of himself. She was already reading his expression, preparing herself for serious news. Your mother died in a car accident last night. Chloe was quiet for a long moment, processing the information with the same methodical approach she applied to everything else. Was she alone? Yes. Did she suffer? The police don't think so. It was very quick. Chloe nodded, then closed her book and set it aside. Are you sad? The question was characteristically direct. Tom chose to answer honestly. No, I'm not sad. Your mother made choices that hurt our family, and I stopped caring about her well-being a long time ago. But I know she loved you in her own way. I'm not sad either, Chloe said quietly. Does that make me a bad person? Tom pulled his daughter into a hug, marveling at her emotional maturity. No, sweetheart. It makes you honest. Your mother was a stranger to you for the last 2 years. You can't mourn someone you barely knew. Will there be a funeral? Her sister is handling the arrangements. We won't be attending. Chloe considered this. Good. I don't want to pretend to be sad for other people's benefit. Later that evening, after Chloe had gone to bed, Tom reflected on how perfectly his daughter had processed the news. She understood that death didn't automatically erase the harm someone had caused, that blood relations didn't create obligations to mourn, and that honest emotions were more valuable than social expectations. She was going to be formidable as an adult. A week later, Frank delivered the boxes of Lisa's personal effects. Tom went through them carefully before deciding whether to share any of it with Chloe. Most of it was worthless. Jewelry that looked expensive but wasn't, photographs from before the divorce, and a diary filled with self-pitying entries about how unfair her life had become. But buried in the bottom of the last box were 23 letters addressed to Chloe, each dated and numbered. Lisa had apparently written to her daughter regularly after giving up her rights, pouring out her regret and love in pages of desperate handwriting. Tom read through all of them, his expression growing colder with each letter. Even in death, Lisa was trying to manipulate their daughter, portraying herself as a victim of circumstances rather than the architect of her own destruction. He burned every letter without showing them to Chloe. The money, however, he placed in a college fund. Chloe could have that inheritance. It was rightfully hers. But she didn't need her mother's guilt and self-justification poisoning her thoughts. When Chloe asked about the boxes, Tom told her there had been nothing worth keeping. It was, he reflected, the absolute truth. Chapter 9. The Legacy. 5 years later, Chloe Brennan stood at her 8th grade graduation, delivering the valedictorian speech to a packed auditorium. At 13, she had grown into a poised, articulate young woman who commanded respect from both peers and adults. Tom watched from the audience, feeling a deep sense of pride and satisfaction. His daughter spoke about integrity, the importance of keeping one's word, and the value of surrounding yourself with people who shared your principles. She never mentioned her mother, and Tom knew she never would. Family isn't just about blood, Chloe said, her clear voice carrying across the auditorium. It's about loyalty, trust, and mutual respect. It's about people who show up when they say they will, who keep their promises, and who never make you wonder where you stand with them. The audience applauded, but Tom could see that some of the parents looked uncomfortable. They recognized the subtext of his daughter's words, the implicit rejection of the idea that family bonds were sacred regardless of behavior. After the ceremony, Tom was approached by several parents who wanted to congratulate him on raising such an impressive daughter. He accepted their praise graciously, though he knew many of them whispered about his ruthless handling of his divorce and his complete cutoff of his ex-wife. Let them whisper, he thought. Chloe was proof that his methods had worked. Dad? Chloe said, joining him as the crowd began to disperse. Monica said she has a surprise for me back at the office. Can we stop by before dinner? Of course, though I think I know what the surprise is. They drove to Brennan Strategic Consulting, where Monica and the rest of the staff had decorated the conference room with balloons and a banner reading, "Congratulations, future partner." Chloe laughed and hugged Monica, who had become something of a surrogate aunt over the years. Future partner? I'm only 13. Never too early to start planning, Monica replied. Your dad's already set aside an office for you when you're ready. As they celebrated with cake and stories about Chloe's academic achievements, Tom felt a profound sense of completion. He had built something lasting, not just a successful business, but a family based on merit, loyalty, and shared values rather than obligation and guilt. Later that evening, As they sat on their back deck watching the sunset, Chloe brought up a topic that surprised him. "Dad, I've been thinking about Mom lately." Tom tensed slightly. "Oh, not in a sad way," Chloe clarified quickly. "More like trying to understand how someone makes the choices she made. In psychology class, we've been studying decision-making and moral development. I keep wondering what was missing in her thinking that made her believe betraying her family was acceptable." Tom studied his daughter's face, seeing the analytical mind that had inherited from him. "What conclusions have you reached?" "I think she never learned to consider long-term consequences. Everything she did was about immediate gratification, the excitement of an affair, the thrill of secrets, the temporary pleasure of getting what she wanted in the moment. She never thought about how her choices would affect you, or me, or even herself down the road." "That's a very mature analysis." "I also think," Chloe continued, "that she never understood the difference between love and possession. She said she loved me, but then she did things that hurt me. Real love means protecting someone, even from yourself, if necessary." Tom felt a chill of recognition. His daughter had articulated something he'd never quite put into words, the fundamental difference between his love for her and Lisa's selfish attachment. "You know," Chloe said, looking directly at him, "I'm glad you didn't forgive her. I'm glad you didn't take her back or give her more chances. Some people think that makes you cold, but I think it makes you strong. It taught me that my actions have real consequences and that people I love deserve better than my worst impulses." "Some people would say forgiveness is a virtue," Tom replied carefully. "Forgiveness is earned," Chloe said firmly, "and it can't be separated from justice. Mom never faced the real consequences of what she did because she died before she could rebuild her life and prove she'd changed. But you faced the consequences of your choices too. You lost someone you loved and had to rebuild your life as a single parent. The difference is, your choices were about protecting your family. Hers were about destroying it." As the stars came out, Tom realized that his greatest victory wasn't the destruction of Lisa and Kevin. It was the creation of this remarkable young woman who understood that loyalty was earned, that trust was precious, and that some betrayals were unforgivable. Chloe would never be anyone's victim. She would never tolerate deception or betrayal. She would never mistake weakness for kindness or cruelty for love. She was his legacy, and she was perfect. "Dad," Chloe said as they prepared to go inside, "thank you for teaching me that love isn't about accepting whatever people do to you. It's about having standards and protecting the people who deserve protection." Tom smiled, putting his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "You're welcome, kiddo. You're absolutely welcome. The past was buried, the present was secure, and the future belonged to them. In the end, that was all that mattered." Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations. Amos Wilder checked the structural support beam one final time before nodding to his construction team. At 45, his hands were calloused from years of building homes before he'd worked his way up to owning Wilder Construction. The afternoon sun beat down on the luxury home development, his biggest project to date. "Looking solid, boss," said Nick, his foreman of 8 years. "Those custom beams you insisted on are costing us, but damn if they won't outlast everything else in town." Amos smiled. "You can't put a price on foundations that hold." His phone buzzed with a text from his 17-year-old daughter, Brooke. "Don't forget Mom's award dinner tonight. Uncle Rick's already helping her get ready." Amos frowned. Richard Foster wasn't actually Brooke's uncle, just his wife Vanessa's childhood friend who'd moved back to Springfield 3 months ago after a divorce. The man had quickly embedded himself in their lives, always available to help Vanessa with her real estate business or drive Brooke to her activities when Amos was handling construction emergencies. "Need to wrap this up," Amos told Nick. "Vanessa's getting some Realtor of the Year award tonight." "The wife deserves it," Nick replied. "Selling million-dollar properties while you're knee-deep in concrete all day. You two built an empire from nothing." That was true. 15 years ago, Amos had been a carpenter with dreams, and Vanessa a rookie real estate agent. They'd fallen in love, pooled their talents, and created a life together, him building houses, her selling them. After Brooke was born, they'd struggled through lean years, living in a cramped apartment while pouring everything into their businesses. Now they owned the 5-bedroom colonial on Maple Drive, had healthy retirement accounts, and Brooke would start college next year. The American dream realized through sheer determination. Amos showered at the work trailer and changed into the tailored navy suit Vanessa had bought him last Christmas. As he drove his pickup toward home, he fought the uneasiness that had been growing for weeks. Vanessa had become distant, constantly busy with work or community events. When they did talk, conversations were superficial or centered on Brooke. Their physical relationship had withered too. Vanessa claimed exhaustion or headaches whenever Amos initiated intimacy. He'd blamed work stress at first, but now wondered if there was more. "You're being paranoid," he muttered to himself. They'd built too much together to throw it away. Yet the doubt lingered. Pulling into his driveway, Amos noticed Rick's silver Mercedes already parked outside. The sight irritated him more than it should have. Rick Foster had appeared in their lives with his designer clothes and slick charm right after Vanessa's real estate business had expanded to luxury properties. Something about the timing felt off. Inside, Amos heard laughter from upstairs. He climbed the steps quietly, pausing when he heard Brooke's voice from Vanessa's home office. "Mom, you look amazing. Rick has the best taste." "The man knows his fashion," Vanessa replied. "Unlike some people who think flannel and work boots are appropriate for every occasion." Amos stiffened at the dismissive tone in his wife's voice. "Dad's not that bad," Brooke said without conviction. "Honey, your father is a good man, but let's be honest, he's out of his depth in my world now. Rick understands the importance of appearances in luxury real estate. He gets everything," Brooke agreed. "Dad's just so embarrassing sometimes. Last week at the Hendersons' party, he was talking about support beams while everyone else discussed their European vacations." Amos's chest tightened. He'd thought the Hendersons had been interested in his explanation of why their new home would withstand anything nature threw at it. "Your father built his business from nothing," Vanessa said, though her tone held little admiration. "But he refuses to evolve. Rick says image is everything in our industry." "Rick says a lot of things," Amos said, stepping into the doorway. The room fell silent. Vanessa stood in a form-fitting black dress, diamonds at her throat, a necklace he didn't recognize. Brooke sat on the office sofa, suddenly finding her phone fascinating. "Amos, we didn't hear you come in." Vanessa recovered quickly. "Rick helped me choose this dress for tonight. He'll be back to drive us to the ceremony. His car makes a better impression than your truck." "I'm sure he will," Amos replied evenly, though his jaw clenched. "Since when does Rick choose your clothes?" Vanessa sighed dramatically. "Don't start. He has connections with designers I need to impress. This is important for my business. Our businesses used to support each other," Amos reminded her. "Now I barely recognize what we're becoming." "What we're becoming is successful," Vanessa snapped. "Maybe if you spent more time understanding my world instead of dwelling in yours, you'd see that." Brooke stood abruptly. "I'm going to finish getting ready." After she left, Amos stepped closer to his wife. "What's really going on with Rick?" "He's a friend helping my career," Vanessa replied too quickly. "Unlike you, he understands where I'm trying to go." "And where exactly is that?" Amos asked quietly. Vanessa's expression softened slightly. "Look, we can talk later. Tonight's important. Can you just play along? Smile, shake hands, and let me handle the conversations." The request stung more than she could know. The foundation of their relationship had always been equality, partners with different strengths working towards shared goals. Now she wanted him as a silent accessory. "Sure," he finally said. "I'll smile and shake hands. But this conversation isn't over." As Amos changed clothes, his phone buzzed with a text from Ted Walsh, an old friend who'd become a private investigator. "Found something. Call me when you can." 3 weeks earlier, against every principle he'd lived by, Amos had hired Ted to look into Rick Foster's background and his relationship with Vanessa. Tonight, it seemed, he'd finally learn if his foundations were truly crumbling. Chapter 2. Cracks. Rick Foster's silver Mercedes pulled away from the curb with Vanessa beside him in the passenger seat, leaving Amos to follow in his truck. Brooke had opted to ride with her mother, claiming Rick's car was more comfortable. The slight wasn't lost on Amos. He used the solitude to call Ted Walsh. "Ted, what did you find?" "Nothing good, Amos." Ted's voice was grim. "Foster isn't who he claims to be. His real name is Richard Fontaine. He changes his identity every few years after systematically targeting successful women, usually in real estate." Amos's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Go on." "He's not divorced. He was never married. He fabricates a past, gains trust, then positions himself as an essential business partner. Eventually, he gets his name on assets, drains accounts, and disappears. 3 women in different states have filed complaints, but he's careful to get them to sign documents that make everything look legitimate. Vanessa would never fall for that, Amos said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. She already has, Ted replied. 2 weeks ago, she added him as a partner to her luxury division. Yesterday, she transferred $175,000 to a joint business account with him. Amos nearly swerved off the road. That's impossible. She would have told me. There's more, Ted continued reluctantly. They've been looking at property together in Costa Rica, a villa on the beach, non-extradition country. Are they? Amos couldn't finish the question. Yes, Ted confirmed. They're sleeping together. Been meeting at the lakeside motel twice a week for the past month. I've got photos if you need them. Amos felt physically ill. No, I believe you. There's one more thing, Ted added. Foster's been talking to your daughter too. Lots of texts, some calls. He's grooming her to trust him over you. Classic isolation tactic. The realization hit Amos like a collapsing wall. Rick wasn't just stealing his wife. He was stealing his daughter's trust and their entire financial future. I'll send everything to your secure email, Ted finished. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, Amos replied honestly, but I need to be smart about this. He ended the call and continued driving toward the banquet hall, mind racing. Years of solving complex construction problems had taught him to approach crises, assess the damage, determine what could be salvaged, then rebuild stronger. This would be no different, except the stakes were infinitely higher. At the awards ceremony, Amos watched from their table as Vanessa accepted her Realtor of the Year award. She thanked her business partner and dear friend, Rick Foster, before giving Amos a brief, almost afterthought acknowledgement as my supportive husband. The crowd applauded politely while Rick beamed. Brooke looked at Rick with obvious admiration. Throughout the evening, Amos observed their interactions with new awareness. The casual touches between Rick and Vanessa, how they finished each other's sentences, the inside jokes. Amos had been so consumed with growing his business that he'd missed the destruction of his home life. Congratulations, he told Vanessa sincerely when they had a moment alone. Despite everything, her professional accomplishment was genuine. Thanks, she replied, surprised by his warmth. I thought you'd be upset about Rick being mentioned so prominently. I'm not upset, Amos said carefully. Just curious about your new business arrangement with him. The luxury division partnership. Vanessa's eyes widened slightly. How did you know about that? I'm your husband, he reminded her. Did you think I wouldn't find out you've transferred company funds to a joint account with him? She recovered quickly. It's a business decision. Rick has connections I need. The money is for securing exclusive listings. Is that what the Costa Rica property is? An exclusive listing? Color drained from Vanessa's face. Before she could respond, Rick approached with champagne flutes. Celebrating the woman of the hour, he announced, handing Vanessa a glass while pointedly not offering one to Amos. The Springfield luxury market belongs to us now. Apparently so, Amos replied evenly. You've certainly made yourself indispensable, Rick. Or should I call you Richard Fontaine? Rick's smile faltered momentarily before returning. I don't know what you're talking about, buddy. Champagne making you confused. Dad, stop it, Brooke hissed, appearing beside them. You're embarrassing Mom on her big night. The word embarrassing cut deep, echoing their earlier conversation. We should discuss this at home, Vanessa said tightly. Yes, Amos agreed. We absolutely should. The rest of the evening passed in excruciating politeness. When they finally arrived home, Rick conspicuously not joining them, Vanessa immediately went on the offensive. You had me investigated? She demanded once Brooke had gone upstairs. What kind of controlling, paranoid husband does that? The kind who knows his wife is being conned, Amos replied calmly. Rick Foster is a fraud, Vanessa. He's done this before multiple times. That's ridiculous, she scoffed. You're just jealous of our success. Our success? Vanessa, we built our success together over 15 years. He showed up 3 months ago and accomplished more for my business in 3 months than you have in years, she shot back. You've been holding me back, stuck in your small-time thinking while I'm trying to reach the next level. The accusation stung, but Amos recognized manipulation when he saw it. Has he asked you to sign anything recently? Property transfers? Loan applications? Vanessa's hesitation told him everything. He wants to help expand my business internationally, she finally said, which requires some asset restructuring. He wants to steal everything we've built, Amos countered. Think, Vanessa. How much do you really know about him? Have you verified anything he's told you? I don't need to. I trust him. More than you trust me? Your husband of 18 years. Vanessa looked away. People change, Amos. We've grown apart. Rick understands me now in ways you don't even try to. Does Brooke know you're planning to leave? That you've been lying to her? I haven't been lying, Vanessa insisted. I've been protecting her while figuring things out. And Rick genuinely cares about her future. I'm sure he does, Amos said bitterly. Especially the college fund we've saved for her. Vanessa's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it, then back at Amos. This conversation is going nowhere. I'm tired. We'll talk tomorrow. After she went upstairs, Amos checked his email. Ted had sent a comprehensive file on Richard Fontaine/Rick Foster, including documentation of his previous cons, photo evidence of the affair, and copies of business documents Vanessa had signed. Most disturbing was the transcript of text messages between Rick and Vanessa discussing their plans. Once the final papers are signed, we'll have control of both businesses. Amos won't know what hit him until it's too late. Brooke will adjust. Kids always follow the money. Amos printed key documents and placed them in a folder. Then he made several calls, set his alarm for early morning, and tried to sleep, though rest wouldn't come easily. Tomorrow would change everything. Chapter 3. Exposed. Amos woke before dawn. He dressed quietly, gathered the folder of documents, and made a pot of coffee before calling Nick. Need you to take point on the Wellington project today, he told his foreman. Family emergency. Everything okay, boss? Nick asked. No, Amos answered honestly. But it will be. I might need a couple of days. After ending the call, Amos heard movement upstairs. He waited at the kitchen table, sipping coffee as footsteps descended the stairs. Brooke appeared first, freezing when she saw him. Dad, why are you up so early? Waiting to talk to you and your mother, he replied. Where's she going this morning? Meeting Rick for breakfast to discuss some international client. Brooke shifted uncomfortably. I'm going too. He's picking us up. Cancel it, Amos said firmly. We need to talk. As a family. Dad, this is important for Mom's career. More important than our family, he interrupted. Brooke, there are things you don't know. Things your mother and Rick have been hiding from both of us. Brooke's expression hardened. If this is about Mom and Rick's friendship, they already told me you might get jealous and try to sabotage their business plans. Mom said you've always resented her success. The level of manipulation stunned Amos. They'd been systematically turning his daughter against him. Before he could respond, Vanessa appeared, already dressed in a business suit. Brooke, why aren't you ready? Rick will be here in 20 minutes. She's not going, Amos stated calmly. None of us are. We're having a family meeting right now. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. We have an important meeting. With the man who's planning to steal everything we own? That meeting. Amos pushed the folder toward her. I know everything, Vanessa. The affair, the business partnership, the transfers, Costa Rica. All of it. Brooke looked between them, confused. What's he talking about, Mom? Vanessa's composure cracked slightly. Your father's making wild accusations because he can't handle my success. Rick's been warning me about his controlling behavior. Rick's been warning you. Amos laughed without humor. Richard Fontaine has been systematically conning you, just like he did to women in Phoenix, Denver, and Seattle. He isolates his targets from their families, gets his name on their assets, then disappears with everything. That's insane, Vanessa insisted, though her voice wavered. Is it? Amos opened the folder and spread out documents. Marriage certificate showing Richard Fontaine has never been married. Police reports from 3 women with similar stories. Text messages between you two planning to clean out our accounts. Brooke picked up one of the papers, her hand trembling. Mom, what is this? You said you'd tell Dad tonight that I'm an embarrassment? That Rick should be the man of this house. Amos finished quietly. Brooke's head snapped up, eyes wide. How did you? I overheard you both yesterday. That's why I had Rick investigated. Vanessa's phone buzzed repeatedly. Rick was calling. She ignored it, staring at the evidence before her. It's not what it looks like, she began. It's exactly what it looks like, Amos countered. You've been sleeping with him, planning to leave me, and setting up to take my business in the process. You were going to tell me tonight, after having me sign those routine partnership documents Rick prepared. Brooke was reading through text messages, tears forming. Mom, you told me you and Dad were having problems because he was holding you back. You said Rick was just helping your career. He is helping, Vanessa insisted desperately. These documents are fake. Your father's trying to destroy my relationship with Rick because he's jealous. The doorbell rang. Rick had arrived. Perfect timing, Amos said, standing. Let's hear what he has to say about all this. Don't answer it, Vanessa blurted, panic rising in her voice. Amos walked to the door and opened it. Rick stood there in an expensive suit, smiling confidently until he saw Amos's expression. Morning, buddy, Rick said smoothly. Vanessa and Brooke ready for our meeting? They're ready for the truth, Richard Fontaine, Amos replied. Come in. We've been discussing your interesting history. Rick's smile vanished. He glanced past Amos to where Vanessa stood ashen-faced in the hallway, Brooke beside her holding documents. Whatever he's told you is a lie, Rick said quickly to Vanessa. We need to go now? The international clients won't wait. There are no international clients, Amos said. Just like there was no divorce, no Harvard degree, and no real estate empire in California. It's all fiction, isn't it, Rick? Rick's expression hardened. Vanessa, we need to leave. Now. I don't think my wife is going anywhere with you, Amos stated firmly. Your wife? Rick sneered. She hasn't been your wife in any real sense for months. Tell him, Vanessa. Tell him how you feel about his embarrassing blue-collar ways. How you and Brooke have outgrown him. Brooke stepped forward, eyes flashing. Don't speak for me. I never said. I overheard my daughter tell my wife, Dad's an embarrassment. Uncle Rick should be the man of this house, Amos quoted. My wife agreed. We'll tell him tonight. I silently backed away, my heart shattered. When they came downstairs, I was waiting. Looking for this? I asked, holding the documents they never expected to see. He gestured to the evidence spread across the table. Phone records, bank transfers, your criminal history, everything. Rick's charm evaporated, replaced by cold calculation. You've got nothing that will stick. Vanessa signed everything voluntarily. It's all legal. Is fraud legal? Identity theft? Tax evasion? Amos countered. The FBI doesn't think so. They're very interested in your pattern of behavior across state lines. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Rick's eyes. You're bluffing. Special Agent Carson would disagree, Amos replied. I called her yesterday after seeing the evidence. She's been building a case against you for years. Those 3 women you conned weren't your only victims, just the only ones brave enough to file reports. Vanessa sank into a chair. This can't be happening. Oh, it gets worse, Amos continued. Those partnership documents you signed, they don't just make Rick a partner in your business. They give him controlling interest in both our companies. He'd own everything. The businesses, this house, even Brooke's college fund. Brooke turned to her mother, horrified. You were giving him my college money? No, I would never. Vanessa began, then faltered. I didn't read everything he had me sign. He said they were standard incorporation documents for our international division. You betrayed Dad, and you were going to let this man steal everything? Brooke's voice broke. How could you? Rick moved toward the door. This is all a misunderstanding. I need to reschedule our meeting. You're not going anywhere, Amos said as the front door opened behind Rick. Ted Walsh entered with another man who pulled out a badge. Richard Fontaine? I'm Special Agent Carson, FBI. We need to talk about multiple counts of wire fraud, identity theft, and crossing state lines to commit crimes. Rick's face drained of color. This is ridiculous. Vanessa will tell you our business arrangement is completely legitimate. All eyes turned to Vanessa, who stared at the documents before her, evidence of her husband's loyalty and her own terrible mistake. Vanessa? Rick prompted desperately. Tell them. She looked up at Amos, then at Brooke, shame evident in her eyes. Finally, she turned to Agent Carson. I'll tell you everything he did, she said quietly. Every document, lie, manipulation, all of it. As Rick was escorted from the house, Brooke fled upstairs, slamming her door. Vanessa and Amos remained in the wreckage of their family's trust. What happens now? She asked hollowly. Amos gathered the documents into the folder. Now we see what can be salvaged, he answered. If anything. Chapter 4, Aftershocks. 3 days after Rick's arrest, Amos moved into the guest bedroom. The house that had once felt like a sanctuary now echoed with uncomfortable silences, and avoided gazes. Vanessa had spent hours with FBI agents, detailing every document she'd signed and every conversation with Rick. The story had exploded across local news. Prominent realtor nearly victim of serial fraudster. They nearly was Amos's doing. He'd acted before Rick could finalize the transfers or flee the country. Despite everything, he couldn't bear to see Vanessa publicly ruined, not when she was already shattered by her own mistakes. Amos sat in his home office reviewing construction bids when Brooke appeared in the doorway. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. "Always," he replied, setting aside his work. She entered hesitantly, perching on the edge of a chair. At 17, she suddenly looked younger, vulnerability replacing the confident facade she'd adopted in recent months. "I said terrible things about you," she began. "Things I didn't even really believe. Rick and Mom kept talking about how you didn't fit their world anymore, and I just went along with it." "Why?" Amos asked simply. Brooke's eyes filled with tears. "Because it was easier than defending you. Mom was so excited about everything Rick promised. The international clients, luxury properties, fancy parties. She said you were holding her back, and I started seeing you through her eyes." The admission hurt, but Amos appreciated her honesty. When you're building something that matters, Brooke, you don't cut corners. You don't sacrifice integrity for speed or appearance. That applies to buildings and relationships. "I know that now," she whispered. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" Amos sighed heavily. "I don't know. That depends on a lot of things. She cries all the time," Brooke offered. "When she thinks I can't hear. Actions have consequences," Amos replied, more sharply than intended. He softened his tone. "Your mother made choices that hurt us all. Rebuilding trust isn't easy. Like rebuilding a foundation after it's damaged." Despite everything, Amos smiled slightly. "Exactly like that. Sometimes it's possible. Sometimes you have to tear everything down and start over." Brooke nodded, understanding the metaphor. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. And I'm glad you're my dad." After she left, Amos tried to focus on work again, but his mind kept returning to Vanessa. 18 years of marriage, reduced to betrayal and humiliation. Part of him wanted to walk away, file for divorce, and start fresh. Another part remembered the young couple who'd promised to face life's challenges together. His thoughts were interrupted by his phone buzzing. Teresa Bennett, one of Vanessa's closest friends and fellow real estate agent. "Amos, you need to get to the office now," Teresa said without preamble. "Lawrence Whitney is here with his legal team, threatening to sue Vanessa for fraud. They're saying she knowingly partnered with a criminal to handle their property sale." Lawrence Whitney was Vanessa's biggest client, a developer with multiple luxury properties. If he pulled his business and sued, others would follow. Vanessa's career would be destroyed. "Stall them," Amos instructed. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. He found Vanessa's office in chaos. Whitney, a corpulent man with an expensive suit and perpetual scowl, was berating Vanessa while two attorneys took notes. Teresa stood protectively beside Vanessa, who looked shell-shocked. "Mr. Whitney," Amos interrupted, striding confidently into the room. "I understand you have concerns about your properties." Whitney turned his glare on Amos. "This doesn't concern you. Your wife associated with a known fraudster and put my investments at risk. Actually, my wife was the victim of sophisticated fraud, as the FBI has confirmed," Amos corrected calmly. "And this absolutely concerns me. Not just as her husband, but as the contractor who built your lake house, mountain retreat, and downtown penthouse." Whitney blinked, momentarily thrown. "What's your point?" "My point is that my construction company and my wife's real estate firm have always operated with absolute integrity. One criminal attempting to infiltrate our businesses doesn't change that. Foster, or whatever his name is, met with my representatives. He claimed to be a partner authorized to negotiate discounts." Amos nodded. "Which is precisely why he's now in FBI custody. But your properties are secure, your contracts with Wilder Realty are valid, and frankly, if you pursue legal action against a victim of crime, the publicity won't reflect well on you." The attorneys exchanged glances. One whispered something to Whitney, who frowned. "The market's too hot for you to waste time with lawsuits," Amos continued. "Especially when my wife is prepared to reduce her commission on your next 3 sales by 5% as a gesture of goodwill." Vanessa looked up sharply. Whitney's expression changed. 10%, Whitney countered. 7, Amos replied firmly. and will expedite the permits for your new development through my contacts at the city. After a moment's consideration, Whitney nodded. Acceptable. Have the paperwork ready tomorrow. After Whitney and his attorneys departed, Teresa excused herself, leaving Amos and Vanessa alone. You didn't have to do that, Vanessa said quietly. Yes, I did, Amos replied. Whatever's happening between us, I won't stand by and watch your career be destroyed. Tears filled her eyes. Why? After what I did. Because despite everything, we built this life together. And I won't let a con man like Rick destroy what took us years to create. Vanessa wiped her eyes. The 7% commission reduction will cost me thousands. Better than a lawsuit that costs you everything, Amos pointed out. I'll help cover the difference if needed. She stared at him, bewildered by his support after her betrayal. I don't deserve your help. Probably not, he agreed bluntly. But Brooke deserves parents who don't destroy each other, even when they're hurt. And I built my life on fixing problems, not walking away from them. As Amos turned to leave, Vanessa called after him. The FBI found the money. All of it. Rick hadn't managed to move it offshore yet. Good. Amos replied without turning back. At least something can be recovered. What remained unspoken was whether their marriage could be. Chapter 5. Countermeasures. 2 weeks after Rick's arrest, Amos arrived at the construction site of the Wellington project to find a city inspector placing a stop work order on the main gate. What's going on? He demanded, approaching the inspector. Violation of building codes, the man replied, not meeting Amos's eyes. Anonymous complaint. That's impossible, Amos countered. We've passed every inspection with flying colors. Which specific codes are allegedly violated? The inspector handed him a document listing 20 supposed violations, most of them trivial or completely fabricated. Amos recognized the handiwork immediately. This had Rick Foster written all over it. This is harassment, Amos told the inspector. The person behind these complaints is currently in federal custody for fraud. The inspector shrugged. Doesn't matter who filed it. I have to investigate each claim, which means work stops until they're cleared. Could take weeks. Amos called his attorney from the truck, pacing as he explained the situation. It's Rick, he concluded. He's retaliating from jail. Unlikely he's doing this alone, his attorney replied. He must have contacts helping him. Stop work orders like this don't happen without someone pushing buttons at the city. Can you get it lifted? Eventually. But these things move slowly through official channels. Amos ended the call, frustration building. A stop work order would cost thousands daily in idle crew wages, delayed materials, and penalty clauses with clients. Rick was attacking his livelihood, knowing exactly where it would hurt most. When he arrived home that evening, he found Vanessa and Brooke in the kitchen reviewing college brochures. The scene of domestic normalcy felt surreal given everything that had happened. How was your day? Vanessa asked cautiously. They'd established an uneasy truce, navigating day-to-day interactions with painful politeness. Someone filed multiple code violation complaints against the Wellington project, Amos replied. We're shut down indefinitely. Vanessa's expression shifted to alarm. That's your biggest project. I'm aware, he said dryly. Rick's behind it somehow. How could he do anything from jail? Brooke asked. He's not working alone, Amos explained. He's got someone at the city helping him. Vanessa paled. Philip Gaines, she whispered. Who? The Deputy Commissioner for Planning and Development. He's an old friend of Rick's. They played squash together. Rick introduced us at a charity event last month. Amos's jaw tightened. And you're just mentioning this now? I didn't think it was important. He was just one of dozens of people Rick introduced me to. Vanessa's defensive tone gave way to realization. Rick was always introducing me to officials, bankers, developers. He was building a network he's now using against me. Amos concluded grimly. I'll call Philip, Vanessa offered. Explain the situation. And say what? That your lover is using him to attack your husband's business. The words came out harsher than intended. Brooke stood abruptly. I'm going to my room. After she left, Vanessa faced Amos directly. I deserve that. But I'm trying to help now. Too little, too late, Amos muttered, then sighed. I'm sorry. That's not fair. No, it's completely fair, Vanessa admitted. I betrayed you in every possible way. But I meant it about helping. Philip respected me professionally before he knew about Rick. I can at least try. Amos nodded, too exhausted to argue. I appreciate that. Later that night, Unable to sleep, Amos reviewed everything Ted had gathered on Rick's previous cons. A pattern emerged. Rick always had an escape plan, including offshore accounts his victims never discovered. The FBI had recovered the money Vanessa transferred, but Amos suspected there was more, Rick's personal stash from previous schemes. He called Ted. I need everything you can find on Rick's finances. Not just what he stole from Vanessa, but any accounts he might have had before. That's a tall order, Ted replied. Guys like him are careful. He's human. He makes mistakes. The next morning, Amos drove to the city planning office and requested a meeting with Commissioner Sandra Morales, Philip Gaines's superior. He'd worked with her on several community development projects and hoped their professional relationship might help. This is highly irregular, Commissioner Morales said after hearing his explanation. Deputy Gaines followed proper protocol in issuing the investigation. The complaint is baseless harassment, Amos argued. My company has an impeccable safety record. We've never had a single valid code violation in 15 years. I understand your frustration, but I can't intervene in an active investigation without cause. Amos leaned forward. The cause is that Philip Gaines is doing the bidding of a federal criminal defendant. Richard Fontaine, aka Rick Foster, is manipulating your department as retaliation against a witness. Morales frowned. That's a serious accusation. One I can prove, Amos replied, sliding across a folder containing communications between Rick and Philip that Ted had uncovered. They're using your department to settle a personal vendetta. That puts the city at legal risk. Commissioner Morales reviewed the documents, her expression hardening. I'll look into this immediately. By afternoon, the stop work order had been lifted. By evening, Philip Gaines had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. It was a victory, but Amos knew the war wasn't over. When he returned home, he found Vanessa waiting for him. Philip Gaines called me, she said. He's furious. Says Rick promised him a position in their international real estate venture, the one that never existed. Another victim added to Rick's list, Amos noted without sympathy. There's more, Vanessa continued. Philip mentioned something about Rick's contingency plans. Said Rick always had insurance against people who crossed him. Amos tensed. What kind of insurance? He wouldn't elaborate. But he seemed scared, Amos. Not just angry, but genuinely afraid of what Rick might do. The implications were disturbing. What leverage did Rick have over his network of accomplices? And what might he do if he felt cornered? Before Amos could respond, his phone rang. It was Ted. You were right, Ted said without preamble. Found an account in the Caymans under the name Richard Fantasia, close enough to Fontaine to be him, different enough to avoid easy detection. Nearly $3 million in it. Can you access it? Not legally, Ted replied. But I found something else. His visitor log at the detention center. He's had the same visitor 3 times this week, a Sophia Valdez. She's a paralegal at Benson and Howard. Amos recognized the name. That's Whitney's law firm. The same Whitney who tried to sue Vanessa. Exactly. And guess what else? Ms. Valdez just booked a flight to Grand Cayman, leaving tomorrow. The pieces clicked into place. Rick was orchestrating his escape plan from jail, using Sophia to access his emergency funds. We need to move fast, Amos told Ted. Contact Agent Carson. Tell her everything. After ending the call, he turned to find Vanessa watching him intently. What's happening? She asked. Rick's planning something big, Amos explained. He has millions hidden offshore and someone helping him access it. For what purpose? I don't know yet, Amos admitted. But people like Rick don't go down quietly. They fight back. Late that night, Amos received a text from an unknown number. You think you've won? I'm just getting started. Everyone has secrets, Amos. Even you. Tomorrow, Springfield learns yours. The threat was clear. Rick was escalating beyond business attacks. He was going personal. Chapter 6. Exposed Secrets. Amos stared at the threatening text, a chill running through him. Rick was right. Everyone had secrets. But what could Rick possibly know about him? He showed the message to Vanessa, who had been hovering nearby since their earlier conversation. What is he talking about? She asked, alarmed. What secrets? I have no idea, Amos admitted. My life's an open book. You know everything about me. Not according to Rick, Vanessa said hesitantly. He told me things. About your past. Amos's eyes narrowed. What things? He said you had a criminal record that you'd hidden. That before moving to Springfield, You'd been involved in construction fraud in Pennsylvania. He showed me court documents. Court documents? Amos laughed incredulously. Vanessa, I've never even been to Pennsylvania. Those documents were fabricated, just like everything else about him. I realize that now, she replied quietly. But at the time, it made me doubt you. It made his other lies more believable. The revelation stung. Rick had poisoned his wife's trust long before the affair began. Amos's phone rang. Ted again. I've been digging into what leverage Rick might have, Ted reported. Found something disturbing. Someone's been combing through your background for months. Deep searches into your family history, financials, everything. And they've been fabricating evidence. Fake court records, doctored photos, manufactured witnesses. Building a completely false narrative about your past. For what purpose? Amos asked, though he already suspected the answer. Character assassination, Ted replied grimly. They've compiled a dossier painting you as a lifelong con man who's been defrauding clients for years. It's sophisticated work. They've created a paper trail that would fool most people. Who's behind it? The paralegal, Sophia Valdez, handled the legwork. But the strategy has Rick's fingerprints all over it. Amos ended the call and updated Vanessa, who looked increasingly horrified. He's going to frame you for the very crimes he's committed, she realized. Make it look like you're the fraudster. Exactly, Amos confirmed. If he's going down, he wants to take me with him. But why? You're not the one who turned him in. I was. Because I'm the one who exposed him, Amos explained. In his mind, if I hadn't investigated him, you would have left with him. His perfect con ruined by the blue-collar husband he underestimated. Amos spent the rest of the night on the phone with Agent Carson, his attorney, trusted business associates. By morning, he had a clearer picture of Rick's plan and had begun formulating his counterattack. At breakfast, he explained to Vanessa and Brooke, Rick's fabricated evidence will be delivered to the Springfield Tribune today. They'll likely run it without thorough fact-checking. The story's too juicy to resist. Can't we stop it? Brooke asked anxiously. Not entirely, Amos admitted. But we can control our response. I've arranged a press conference for this afternoon. Before that, I need to warn our closest friends and biggest clients personally. What about your employees? Vanessa asked. They need to hear this from you first. Amos nodded in agreement. I'll address them this morning. As predicted, by midday social media was buzzing with rumors. The Tribune had published an exclusive investigation titled Local Builders' Criminal Past Exposed, filled with Rick's fabricated evidence. It painted Amos as a master manipulator who had defrauded clients across multiple states before establishing himself in Springfield under a false reputation of integrity. Standing before his assembled construction team at the Wellington site, Amos faced their confused, suspicious stares. These were men who had worked alongside him for years, who trusted him with their livelihoods. You've all seen the news, he began directly. It's a lie. Every word of it. Nick, his foreman, stepped forward. We figured as much, boss. But why is this happening? Amos explained the situation honestly. Rick's fraud, Vanessa's manipulation, the retaliation. He omitted details of the affair to protect what remained of his family's privacy, but otherwise held nothing back. I'm fighting this with everything I have, he concluded. But I understand if any of you want to distance yourselves until it's resolved. The silence that followed was broken by Nick's gruff voice. I've worked with you for 8 years. Seen how you treat people, how you run this business. No way you're what they're saying. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crew. One by one, they voiced their support. We've got your back, Amos. Those Tribune jackasses don't know shit. Just tell us what you need us to do. Their loyalty nearly broke Amos's composure. Thank you, he managed. What I need most is for this project to stay on schedule. Our clients are watching closely. The best defense is showing them we deliver, no matter what. The press conference that afternoon was a calculated risk. Standing before cameras and microphones, Vanessa beside him in a show of unity, Amos addressed the allegations directly. The claims published today are fabricated by Richard Fontaine, currently in federal custody for multiple counts of fraud, he stated firmly. This is retaliation for my role in exposing his criminal activities. He dismantled the Tribune's evidence, pointing out inconsistencies and impossibilities. Then he shifted to offense, revealing Rick's pattern of retaliation against those who exposed him. Mr. Fontaine has $3 million in an offshore account. Amos announced, watching reporters' eyes widen at this previously unreported detail. Money stolen from numerous victims across multiple states. Federal authorities are currently tracking attempts to access these funds, which may implicate additional co-conspirators. The mention of co-conspirators was deliberate, a warning to anyone still working with Rick that they were under scrutiny. After the press conference, Agent Carson called. Bold move, publicly announcing the Cayman account. Sofia Valdez canceled her flight immediately afterward. Good, Amos replied. She should be running scared. She is. Scared enough to start talking. She came to us an hour ago, offering information in exchange for immunity. What kind of information? The full extent of Foster's network. Prominent people in Springfield who helped him, in exchange for promises of future payoffs or to hide secrets he'd uncovered about them. Including Lawrence Whitney? Amos guessed. Among others, Carson confirmed. This goes beyond just you and your wife, Mr. Wilder. Foster was setting up a sophisticated long con involving multiple businesses and city officials. The news was both vindicating and disturbing. Rick's operation was larger than any of them had realized. That evening, Amos received another anonymous text. You think you're clever? You've just guaranteed mutual destruction. Check your email. His email contained video of Vanessa and Rick in an intimate embrace at the Lakeside Motel, clearly filmed without their knowledge. The message was clear. If Rick was going down, he would destroy Amos's marriage publicly in the process. Amos showed Vanessa the video, watching her face crumple with shame. He's threatening to release this if we don't back off. Amos explained unnecessarily. I'm so sorry, she whispered. The humiliation I've caused you. This isn't about my humiliation, Amos interrupted. It's about his desperation. He's running out of options. What are we going to do? Call his bluff, Amos replied. He doesn't understand that I've already faced the worst he could do to me. You betrayed me. I survived it. Nothing he releases publicly can hurt more than that private pain. Vanessa looked stricken. Amos, it's the truth, he said simply. Now we need to decide if we want to save what's left of our marriage or let him destroy it completely. Because that's what this is really about, not the video, but whether we let him win. That night, they talked more honestly than they had in months, perhaps years. About the distance that had grown between them long before Rick appeared. About Vanessa's feelings of being unappreciated and Amos's sense of being devalued. About whether broken trust could ever truly be repaired. No decisions were made, but when Rick's anonymous account released the video to social media the next morning, they faced it together, a united front against a common enemy, if not yet a reconciled couple. The public reaction surprised them both. Instead of scandalized gossip, the community largely rallied around them. The video wasn't seen as shocking exposure, but as a victim being further exploited by her manipulator. Rick's reputation was already so tarnished that his final attack backfired, generating sympathy rather than scandal. Lawrence Whitney withdrew his remaining listings from Vanessa's firm the same day. 3 hours later, after a visit from federal agents, he announced his retirement from real estate development, effective immediately. The dominoes were falling. Rick's network was unraveling as fear of prosecution outweighed loyalty to a jailed fraudster. We've got him, Agent Carson told Amos that evening. With Valdez's testimony and the evidence trail, Richard Fontaine is looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. His co-conspirators are cutting deals left and right to save themselves. What about his offshore money? Amos asked. Frozen by Cayman authorities, Carson confirmed. It will eventually be seized and used for victim restitution. One by one, Rick's weapons against them were neutralized. The false narrative about Amos's past collapsed under FBI verification of its fabrication. The Springfield Tribune published a front-page retraction and apology. Vanessa's real estate license, temporarily under review due to her association with Rick, was fully reinstated. Yet even as the external threats subsided, the fundamental question remained. Could their family recover from the damage inflicted? Or would Rick's ultimate victory be the destruction of what Amos and Vanessa had built together over 18 years? Chapter 7. Rebuilding. 1 month after Rick's final attempt to destroy their reputation, Amos stood in the empty house on Oakwood Drive. The newly completed luxury home represented his company's resilience, finished on schedule despite the chaos Rick had caused. But today, Amos wasn't there as a builder. He was there to think. 18 years of marriage. A daughter about to leave for college. A life constructed meticulously, only to discover the foundation had been compromised. His phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "We need to talk. Important decision to make." Home by 6. They'd established a fragile peace in recent weeks. Separate bedrooms, but shared meals. Co-parenting discussions without personal reconnection. Therapy, both individual and couples, with slow, painful progress. The betrayal remained between them, acknowledged but unresolved. "Still deciding?" Nick asked, appearing in the doorway. His foreman had insisted on personally completing the final inspection with him. "About the house." "It's perfect," Amos replied, knowing that wasn't what Nick meant. "About your marriage," Nick clarified bluntly. "You've been walking around like a man waiting for a verdict." Amos sighed. "It's complicated. Most important things are," Nick agreed. "My old man used to say you can't fix what you don't understand." Wise man. Terrible husband, Nick countered with a rueful smile. Married 5 times. Never learned his own lesson. Always blamed the women. Never looked at his part in the failures. Amos considered this. "What's my part in this failure, Nick? I didn't cheat. I didn't lie." "No, but relationships rarely fail from one side only," Nick observed. "You're the most focused man I know on a job site. Were you that focused at home?" The question hit harder than Amos expected. Had he been as attentive to his marriage as he was to his business? Had he noticed the cracks forming before they became catastrophic? "I need to get back to the office," Amos said, deflecting. Final payment for the Anderson project should have arrived. Nick nodded, recognizing the avoidance, but not pushing further. "Sure, boss. I'll lock up here." At the office, Amos found Ted waiting. They hadn't spoken since Rick's network had been exposed and arrests made. "Thought you'd want this," Ted said, handing over a thick folder. Everything he had on everyone. The FBI released copies since the case is essentially closed. Amos leafed through documents detailing Rick's systematic research into Springfield's power players, their weaknesses, their secrets, their vulnerabilities. A predator's hunting guide. He was thorough, Amos noted grimly. Had dirt on half the city council. "And on you," Ted added, though he had to make most of it up. "You're either the cleanest man alive or the most careful." "Just boring," Amos replied with a slight smile. "No exciting skeletons worth finding." Ted hesitated. "There is one thing, about Vanessa." Amos tensed. "What about her?" "Foster didn't target her randomly. She was specifically selected." "Why?" "Her sales record. Her connections. But mostly because of you." Ted tapped the folder. "His notes show he saw you as the real prize. Your construction company, your reputation, your contracts. Vanessa was the access point." The revelation shifted something in Amos's understanding. Rick hadn't merely seduced his wife. He'd weaponized her against her own husband, using her insecurities to create division that could be exploited. "Does she know this?" Amos asked. "The FBI interviewed her extensively. I assume they shared relevant details." After Ted left, Amos searched through the folder until he found Rick's notes about Vanessa. The calculated seduction was outlined in disturbing detail. V feels underappreciated by husband. Responds to validation of her professional achievements. Insecure about husband's attitude toward her luxury clientele. Easy to drive wedge by emphasizing class differences. Reading Rick's cold assessment of their marital vulnerabilities was sickening. The man had identified the hairline fractures in their relationship and systematically widened them until the structure cracked. At home that evening, Amos found Vanessa in the kitchen preparing dinner, something she hadn't done regularly in years. Brooke was at a friend's house, giving them rare privacy. "You said we need to talk," Amos began, setting the folder on the counter. Vanessa glanced at it nervously. "What's that?" "Rick's notes. On everyone in Springfield. Including us." She paled. "I don't want to see them." "I think you should," Amos countered. "They show how calculated this was. How he identified exactly where we were vulnerable and exploited it." "I already know I was manipulated," Vanessa said defensively. "The FBI showed me enough to understand that." "This isn't about blaming you," Amos clarified. "It's about understanding what happened to us, as a couple, what we both missed." Reluctantly, Vanessa looked at the pages Amos indicated. Her expression shifted from resistance to horror as she read Rick's clinical dissection of their marriage. "He planned everything," she whispered. "From the beginning." "Yes," Amos agreed. "But he could only exploit weaknesses that already existed between us." The admission hung in the air, neither accusation nor absolution, but something more important, truth. Vanessa turned off the stove and faced him fully. I've been offered a position with Bennett Realty in Richmond. Teresa's expanding her firm there. It would be a fresh start. The statement hit Amos like a physical blow. You're leaving? I'm considering it, she replied carefully. Springfield has become difficult. The scandal has died down, but people still talk. Clients have left. And I thought maybe distance would be better for everyone. Including Brooke? Including me. Brooke's leaving for college in 3 months. And you? Vanessa hesitated. You haven't forgiven me, Amos. I'm not sure you ever can. Have you asked if I want to? The question clearly surprised her. After what I did, the affair, the betrayal, nearly losing your business? Why would you want to forgive that? Amos considered his answer carefully. Because 18 years and a daughter together matter. Because we built something valuable before we let it deteriorate. Because Rick doesn't deserve the satisfaction of destroying us completely. That's not enough, Vanessa countered softly. Staying together out of stubbornness or to spite Rick, that's not a marriage. No, Amos agreed. But it might be a starting point for rebuilding one. If we both want to try. Do you? She asked, vulnerability plain in her voice. After everything? Instead of answering directly, Amos asked, why did you make dinner tonight? Confused by the apparent non sequitur, Vanessa replied, because I wanted to. Because it used to make you happy when I cooked. Because it reminded me of when things were good between us. That's my answer too, Amos said quietly. I want to try because I remember when things were good. Because beneath the hurt and anger, I still care what happens to you, to us. It wasn't a declaration of forgiveness or reconciliation. It was something more tentative but perhaps more honest. Acknowledgement that something remained worth salvaging. What's the important decision you mentioned? Amos asked. Whether to take the Richmond job, Vanessa admitted. I have to give Teresa an answer by Friday. And if I asked you to stay? To try rebuilding here. Would you? She asked, searching his face. Ask me to stay? Before Amos could answer, his phone rang. Agent Carson. Mr. Wilder, I thought you should know immediately, she said without preamble. Richard Fontaine attempted suicide in his cell 2 hours ago. He's in critical condition. After the call, Amos relayed the news to Vanessa, watching complex emotions cross her face. Shock, guilt, confusion. He couldn't face the consequences, she murmured. Even after everything. That seems tragic. It is, Amos agreed, surprising himself with the genuine sentiment. Rick had nearly destroyed them. Yet he couldn't summon hatred for the broken man fighting for life in a prison hospital. They sat together in silence, the dinner growing cold, the decision about Richmond temporarily overshadowed by this unexpected development. Finally, Vanessa spoke. I don't want to run away. From Springfield, from what happened from you. Then don't, Amos replied simply. It won't be easy, she warned. People will talk for years. We'll still have all the same problems we had before Rick. The ones that made us vulnerable to him. True, Amos acknowledged. But we'll face them knowing exactly what's at stake. No more taking each other for granted. No more growing apart without noticing. You're talking like a builder again, Vanessa observed with the ghost of a smile. Assessing damage, planning repairs. It's what I know, Amos admitted. You tear out what's compromised, reinforce what's still sound, rebuild what's needed. Sometimes the new structure is stronger than the original. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It wasn't reconciliation, not fully. But as they began clearing the table together, it felt like the first careful placement of new foundation stones. That night, for the first time in months, they slept in the same bed, not touching, but present. A small step toward whatever their future might hold. Chapter 8, Revelations. 2 weeks after Rick's suicide attempt, Amos received a call from Agent Carson with unexpected news. Rick wanted to speak with him, specifically and only him. He's stabilized but remains under guard at Springfield Memorial, Carson explained. His attorneys advised against this meeting, but he's insisting. You're under no obligation to go. Why does he want to see me? Amos asked. He wouldn't say. Given his condition, we don't expect him to survive much longer. The doctors are calling it days, maybe a week. Amos considered refusing. What could Rick possibly say that would matter now? Yet curiosity and something deeper, a need for final resolution, led him to agree. Springfield Memorial's secure ward was depressing, sterile, and surveilled. Rick Fontaine/Foster lay handcuffed to a hospital bed, tubes and monitors connected to his frail body. The once charismatic man who had nearly destroyed Amos's family now looked hollowed out, his handsome features gaunt from illness and despair. Rick's eyes opened as Amos entered. "You came," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Wasn't sure you would." "Neither was I," Amos replied honestly, standing at the foot of the bed. "What do you want, Rick?" A thin smile crossed Rick's face. "First name basis? After everything. Would you prefer I call you Richard Fontaine? Or whatever your real name is?" "Rick Foster is my real name," he admitted surprisingly. "The only thing I didn't lie about. Changed it legally years ago." Amos didn't respond, waiting instead for Rick to explain his summons. "You won," Rick continued after a moment. "Completely. Thoroughly. I've never been defeated so masterfully." "This isn't a competition," Amos replied tersely. "You almost destroyed my family." "Of course it was a competition," Rick countered weakly. "From the moment I targeted Vanessa, targeted you, really, it became a contest of wills. I just didn't realize I was playing until you were already winning." The admission confirmed what Ted had discovered, that Amos had been the real target all along. "Why me? Why my family?" Rick coughed painfully before answering. "You represented everything I resented. Self-made success, actual skills, real respect. I built my life on illusions, but you built things that last." The bitter envy in Rick's voice was palpable. What Amos had earned through years of hard work, Rick had tried to steal through manipulation and deceit. "Did you ask me here just to concede defeat?" Amos asked. "No," Rick replied, reaching painfully for a folded paper on his bedside table. "I called you to give you this." Amos took the paper cautiously. "What is it?" "Account access codes. Cayman Islands. About $3 million the FBI doesn't know about." Rick's eyes gleamed with a shadow of his former cunning. "A separate account from the one they froze." Amos stared at the paper, then back at Rick. "Why would you give me this?" "Because I'm dying," Rick said simply. "Because it might as well go to the worthiest opponent I've ever faced. Because it would infuriate the FBI to know they missed it." "You expect me to take stolen money?" Rick laughed weakly. "No. I expect you to do something boringly noble with it, like returning it to my victims. Which would still be better than the government getting it." Amos folded the paper and put it in his pocket. "Is there anything else?" Rick's expression became suddenly serious. "Tell Vanessa I'm sorry. Not for the con. That was business. But for using her daughter against her. That crossed a line even I recognized too late." The mention of Brooke reignited Amos's anger. "You deliberately manipulated a teenage girl to turn against her father." "Yes," Rick admitted without defense. "It was effective. Also unforgivable. Hence the apology." "An apology you couldn't make to Vanessa directly?" "She wouldn't come," Rick replied. "Can't blame her. The affair was consensual, but the manipulation behind it." He trailed off, seeming genuinely regretful. "When you con someone, you study them intimately. I knew her better than most people ever will. Used every insecurity, every unfulfilled desire. Including her feelings about me," Amos noted. "Especially those," Rick confirmed. "The distance between you was real, Amos. I exploited it, but I didn't create it." The observation echoed what Amos and Vanessa had begun addressing in therapy, that Rick had weaponized existing problems rather than manufacturing them entirely. "She loved you, you know," Rick continued. "Still does, probably. But you stopped seeing her years ago. Both busy, both successful, both taking each other for granted." "You don't know anything about our marriage," Amos said stiffly. "I know everything about your marriage," Rick countered. "Had to infiltrate it. The good and bad. The strengths and weaknesses. Like the way you prioritized work over her events. Or how she resented your practicality while simultaneously depending on it." Despite his resentment, Amos recognized painful truth in Rick's assessment. Their marriage had become functional rather than passionate long before Rick appeared. "Why are you telling me this?" "Professional courtesy," Rick replied with a ghost of his former charm. "One builder to another. You construct with concrete and steel. I built with lies and manipulation. But we both recognize solid foundations when we see them." A nurse entered, checking Rick's monitors with a concerned expression. "5 more minutes," she told Amos firmly. After she left, Rick spoke with renewed urgency. "There's one more thing. Something I discovered about Lawrence Whitney when I was researching potential marks." "Whitney's already under investigation," Amos pointed out. "Not for this," Rick insisted. He's been systematically underpaying property taxes by bribing assessment officials. Millions in fraud spanning a decade. And you didn't use this against him because he was more valuable as an ally than a victim, Rick explained pragmatically. But now, consider it a parting gift. The evidence is in a storage unit at Springfield Self-Storage. Unit 217. Key is taped under the left drawer of my apartment desk. FBI hasn't found it yet. Amos studied the dying man, trying to understand his motives. Why give me this? Because Whitney betrayed Vanessa the moment things got difficult, Rick replied. And while I may have been the biggest threat to your marriage, men like Whitney, who abandon people at the first sign of trouble, they're the real cancer in communities. Coming from a professional con man, the moral judgment was almost comical. Yet Amos sensed genuine conviction behind Rick's words. I'll look into it, he promised noncommittally. Rick nodded, clearly tiring. One last piece of advice? Amos raised an eyebrow questioningly. Forgive her, Rick said simply. Not for her sake, for yours. The greatest revenge against someone like me isn't punishment. It's recovery, rebuilding stronger than before. The nurse returned, signaling the end of the visit. As Amos turned to leave, Rick called after him. In another life, we might have been friends, Amos Wilder. Amos considered this. No, he replied without malice. I don't think we would have. Later that day, Amos verified the storage unit information and turned everything, including the Cayman account details, over to Agent Carson. He kept nothing for himself, wanting no connection to Rick's ill-gotten gains or information. That evening, he shared the encounter with Vanessa, including Rick's apology. Did you believe him? She asked. About being sorry? Partially, Amos replied honestly. He's a manipulator to the end. But there was something genuine there too. He's dying, Vanessa noted softly. Maybe that brings clarity. Or desperation for redemption, Amos countered. Either way, it's over now. We don't owe him anything, not even hatred. They sat together on the back porch, watching the sunset. The physical distance between them had gradually decreased in recent weeks, a subtle sign of healing neither mentioned explicitly. He said something about forgiveness, Amos admitted. That it would be the greatest revenge against him. Vanessa considered this. Is that why you're trying? To spite him? No, Amos answered firmly. I'm trying because whatever he did, whatever mistakes we both made, there's still something here worth saving. She nodded, understanding the nuance. The foundation is still sound. Parts of it, Amos qualified. Other parts need rebuilding. But yes, the core holds. As darkness fell, Brooke texted that she was staying overnight at her friend's house, working on a school project. The message included something new, a heart emoji after Dad. A small gesture of returning affection that moved Amos more than he expected. She's coming back to us, Vanessa observed, reading the text over his shoulder. To you especially. To both of us, Amos corrected. She needs her mother too. The acknowledgement of Vanessa's essential role in their daughter's life, despite her mistakes, was another small step toward reconciliation. Inside, preparing for bed, Vanessa hesitated at the door to the guest room where she'd been sleeping. I was thinking, she began uncertainly. About, Amos prompted. About Rick's point that we stopped seeing each other. Really seeing each other. Before any of this happened. Amos nodded. That was true. I'd like to start seeing you again, Vanessa said quietly. And being seen. If you're willing. The request contained layers of meaning, vulnerability, intimacy, honesty, beyond the simple words. I'd like that too, Amos replied, offering his hand. As they entered their bedroom together, the path forward remained uncertain, the healing incomplete. But the foundation for rebuilding had been laid, one careful stone at a time. Chapter 9. Foundations Renewed. 6 months after Rick Foster died in custody, Amos stood on the porch of the rebuilt Hayes family home. The original structure had burned down the previous winter, leaving the family of 5 homeless. Insurance had covered only part of the reconstruction costs. It's perfect, Linda Hayes said, tears in her eyes as Amos handed her the keys. I can't believe you did this. The whole community did this, Amos corrected, gesturing to the gathered volunteers, many from his construction company, others ordinary Springfield residents who donated time, materials, or funds to the project. What he didn't mention was that a significant portion of the funding had come from the restitution money from Rick's hidden Cayman account. After the FBI had seized it, Amos had petitioned for a portion to be allocated to community rebuilding projects in Springfield, symbolic restoration for the damage Rick had caused. Vanessa appeared beside him, clipboard in hand. "Everything's documented for the insurance company," she told Linda. "And we've registered the upgraded fire safety system with the city." The joint project had been Vanessa's idea, combining Amos's construction expertise with her real estate connections to help families rebuild after disasters. What had begun as a single charitable effort had evolved into the Wilder Foundation, now working on its third reconstruction project. As the Hayes family explored their new home, Amos and Vanessa stepped aside, watching the community celebration unfold. "This is what it's always been about," Amos observed. "Building something that matters." Vanessa nodded, understanding the layers of meaning. "We're good at that." Together, their own rebuilding had progressed slowly, deliberately. Weekly therapy had evolved from crisis management to deeper healing. They'd confronted painful truths about their marriage, how success had paradoxically driven them apart, how they'd stopped communicating beyond logistics and schedules, how they'd taken each other's contributions for granted. Brooke, now in her first year at college, had found her own path to reconciliation with both parents. The trauma of Rick's manipulation had ultimately strengthened her critical thinking and emotional resilience. Her relationship with Amos had been rebuilt through honest conversations about their mutual mistakes, his emotional absence, her temporary rejection. Ted Walsh approached them, camera in hand. "Foundation wants photos of the finished project," he explained, having taken on regular work documenting their charitable efforts. As they posed with the Hayes family before their new home, Amos reflected on the unexpected ways life had transformed in the aftermath of betrayal. The pain remained, a seam in the foundation that would always be visible if you knew where to look, but the structure above it stood stronger, more deliberately crafted. Later that evening, alone at home, Amos and Vanessa sat reviewing plans for their next project. "The Mendez family needs more space than we initially thought," Vanessa noted. "3 generations living together. We can adjust the layout," Amos replied. "Open the communal areas, create more defined private spaces." The comfortable rhythm of their professional collaboration had been the first aspect of their relationship to heal. Common purpose providing neutral ground where trust could gradually rebuild. "I heard from Whitney's attorney today," Vanessa mentioned, changing subjects. "He's making another settlement offer, triple what he originally proposed." Lawrence Whitney had eventually faced charges for tax fraud, using the evidence Rick had collected. His attempt to blame Vanessa for his association with Rick had backfired spectacularly when the full extent of his own crimes was revealed. "Are you considering it?" Amos asked. "Yes," Vanessa replied. "Not for the money, for closure. I want this chapter completely finished." Amos understood the sentiment. They'd spent too long living in the shadow of Rick's manipulation. His phone buzzed with a text from Brooke. "Got an A on my architecture project. Dad's construction wisdom for the win. Love you both." He showed the message to Vanessa, who smiled. "She's thriving there. Despite everything." "Because of everything, maybe," Amos suggested. "She learned early that appearances can deceive. That integrity matters more than image." "Lessons we all learned the hard way," Vanessa acknowledged. The philosophical tone prompted Amos to retrieve something he'd been saving. The final letter Rick had written before his death, delivered by Agent Carson weeks after their hospital meeting. "I never showed you this," he said, offering the unopened envelope. "It came after he died. I wasn't sure if reading it would help or hurt." Vanessa took the envelope cautiously. "Have you read it?" "No," Amos admitted. "Some doors are better left closed." After a moment's hesitation, Vanessa placed the unopened letter in their fireplace and lit a match. "We don't need his words anymore," she said quietly. "We've written our own ending." They watched the letter burn to ash, the final physical connection to Rick Foster disappearing into smoke. Afterward, they moved to the porch swing, the spot where they'd once dreamed of their future together as newlyweds, where they'd planned their family and businesses, and where they were now charting a new chapter. "I've been thinking about taking on an apprentice," Amos mentioned. "Someone young with potential. Start passing on what I've learned." "Legacy planning?" Vanessa asked with a small smile. "Something like that," he agreed. "There's satisfaction in building, but even more in teaching others how to build." "I understand," Vanessa replied. "I've been mentoring 2 new agents. Found I enjoy it more than expected." The parallel paths reflected their individual healing, finding purpose beyond personal success, creating value that would outlast them. As sunset painted the sky in amber and gold, Amos reached for Vanessa's hand, a gesture that had once been automatic, then impossible, now deliberate and meaningful. "Are we going to make it?" Vanessa asked softly, the question containing months of uncertainty, effort, and hope. Amos considered the journey they'd traveled, from betrayal through devastation to careful, intentional rebuilding. The foundation had been cracked, but not destroyed. The structure above had been redesigned, stronger in the broken places. "Yes," he answered with quiet certainty. "We already are." It wasn't a fairy tale ending. The scars remained, visible reminders of wounds that had nearly destroyed them. Trust had been rebuilt deliberately, like laying bricks one by one. Forgiveness had come gradually, not in a single cathartic moment, but through countless small choices to move forward together rather than apart. Rick Foster had underestimated the strength of what Amos and Vanessa had built together. He had exploited its weaknesses but failed to recognize its fundamental soundness. In the end, his greatest miscalculation wasn't in the execution of his con, but in his belief that 18 years of shared history, purpose, and love could be permanently destroyed by his manipulation. As darkness fell, they remained on the porch swing, planning their next project, both the literal reconstruction for the Mendez family and the ongoing building of their own renewed foundation, stronger where it had once been broken, more deliberately crafted where it had been taken for granted. In the distance, the lights of Springfield glowed, a community recovering from its own wounds, learning its own lessons about appearance versus reality, integrity versus image. Like the Wilder marriage, it would never be the same as before. But perhaps, with careful attention to its foundations, it could become something better, more honest, more resilient, more deliberately constructed to withstand whatever storms might come.